All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you ever so much for joining us today for what is going to be an absolutely brilliant session. So strap yourselves in. We've got a very big panel with lots of expertise and knowledge to impart. So it's great to have you here. I'm Becky Willson. I come from the Farm Carbon Toolkit, and we're absolutely thrilled to put this session on this morning talking about, can milk be green? What are some of the challenges that we have in terms of thinking about how we measure, communicate, and discuss some of these different systems that we're having. So I'm just going to start by posing a few questions, which hopefully will be something that you can think about as we go through this session. We're then going to hear a little bit from some of amazing farmers who are starting to implement some of these practices. And then there will be lots of time at the end for discussion. So please keep those questions and we can hopefully have a really good discussion session at the end. So can milk be green? And when I start thinking about this topic, there very much are some key questions and some gaps which we need to fill in to start thinking about this sort of thing. So number one, how do we quantify and measure the importance of these regenerative or grass-based dairy systems when the current metrics, or the metrics that are often used and the standards, are only focused on reducing emissions intensity? If we focus on reducing emissions intensity, then dilution is the solution. We need to produce more milk so that we can spread that footprint over a larger number of litres. And when we end up with a system like that, if you are on a grass-based system, you are often negatively penalised for that. So the answer that you're often given if you have a carbon footprint is feed them more, produce more milk. At what environmental cost? How do we accurately represent the contribution that these regenerative or grass-based systems are providing in terms of what they are returning to our soils? So again, if we look at some of the metrics that have often been used, we're very much focused on understanding the intimate connections with what's going on emissions. But actually, how are we able to provide data and evidence about the unique contribution that these farmers are making in terms of carbon sequestration? How do we start to develop actually solutions which allow us to understand, we know grass is fantastic, but how do we manage that grass in a balanced way to allow us to produce quality milk and sequester more carbon? But also, how do we do this in a cost-effective way? We can't be green if we're in the red. How do we start to deliver solutions which are financially resilient, are environmentally restorative, and help to sustain these farms in the future? So just a few challenges for us to think about. And also for us at Farm Carbon Toolkit, and again with some of my other panelists, how do we support farmers in that transition? So where are those gaps in terms of knowledge, in terms of research, in terms of data? I mean, ideally, we could go back 20 years and start doing huge amounts of soil sampling. We would not be in the position that we are today if we'd have done that. But we can't go backwards, we can only go forwards. So how do we start to collect that data and evidence in a way which allows us to demonstrate that impact? What are the potential barriers around current standards? How do we get over those? And how do we inspire farmers to see that there is another way of doing that? And as I say, we're going to hear very much from some of our panelists about some of the brilliant things that they are doing on the farm and those practices, and think about how we might be able to reflect those in some of the metrics. So I'm going to shut up waffling now, and I'm going to pass on so that we can hear a little bit from Tom from Yo Valley about what his thoughts are.
Thank you, Becky. Really very large question set there to deal with in the next fairly short time. I thought I'd spoil the ending by answering the big question, which can dairy be green? Yes, it absolutely can. That's we're pretty confident about. And I think grass-based dairy systems is what we are really very, very passionate about. What we think kind of are going to deliver the kind of impacts that we want to see, and already have been doing for quite a long time. We have a system in place. And I'm going to try and just highlight a little bit why I think it's already a good system, and then hand over to these guys who I think are going to talk a bit more about some of the things we're trying to develop, because there's still room to do lots more. But we do have a great system, and we need, Becky's the superstar around data, and we know that we always need lots more data, but collaboration, and for organisations like for Yo Valley and First Mill, kind of support providing knowledge sharing and trying to kind of catalyse the conversation are really important parts of making it greener, I guess. And I just wanted to throw in a picture. I think we to bring out the carbon tunnel vision bit just for a second. I don't think at Groundswell I need to voice the top 5 parts of this diagram, but I just wanted to chuck in that, if we're talking about a green dairy system, I think we want to see outputs along the bottom of this slide. Carbon, yes, but really natural, healthy food, biodiversity, air and water quality being something which is coming up the kind of public awareness agenda, animal welfare, key in the dairy systems we look at, absolutely, and rural livelihoods and the social impacts of this system. And I think we can do this. We have a system that's got loads of benefits already. And just to call those out, in grass-based dairy systems, we integrate livestock, absolutely. We see often that the farms that we work with for dairy supply are actually mixed units, increasingly growing homegrown feed. So we've quite a lot going on around the farm, giving that diversity across the landscape, but with large areas of perennial ground cover. And I don't think we talk about perenniality enough as a really, really important concept. Yes, we're going to talk about how the grazing strategy can change, and there's opportunity there to do more, but we should just think about the fact that across our dairy platforms, across livestock, beef and sheep in the UK, we have green ground cover a lot of the time. And if you walk to that end of Groundswell, you can see some amazing technology around how you kind of remediate some of the damage that happens within a annual cropping system. But we should remember that in dairy, we're green a lot of the time. We're armouring the soil a lot of the time. We have a living root all year round. So I think we have a really great starting point there. And given our timings, I thought I'd just pull out one thing that we're trying to talk to people about as a really scalable thing to concentrate on. And I think Mark and I certainly see this as we go onto dairy farms. There's a huge opportunity around increasing diversity. I think if I was going to pull one thing out to say, what can we do a bit more of, dialing up diversity in our annual cropping and in our forages and our grazing is a huge opportunity. And as Becky mentioned, you can't be green if you're in the red. I think diversity is a really key hedge as well to the kind of seasons that we have coming at us now. As we go forwards, we need to build in more resilience, and that is certainly contributes to kind of profitability and business resilience as much as to soil impact, carbon impact, nutrition impact, and all those kinds of things. So we like to talk about herbal layers and diverse cropping as being something which is eminently scalable. People come to see us, and we talk to our retail customers, and we have great interest in agroforestry and things like that. But there are things which we can do first, and dialing up diversity kind of seems to tick an awful lot of boxes. Not least, nutrition, resilience, impact on the soil, and all those kinds of things. Now, beyond that, there's other opportunities, and I think within dairy, again, certainly in southwest England, travelling around, looking out the window, we have this huge amount of biomass in hedges, in hedgerow trees, and in infield trees, which we're probably going to have to think about more. We're probably going to have to measure them more, understand them more, and work out how we support the very clever and careful integration of trees into the grazing landscape. And then also looking at kind of manure management and the grazing strategy bits that Will's going to talk more about. So really what I wanted to sum up was that we have a really good green system now. It's literally green if you look down at it from space. And there's lots of opportunity to increase that, to do more as well. And I think the guys to my left are going to talk a bit more about that.
Thank you, Tom. Andrew, do you want to tell us about what you're doing?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, so we live down near Newquay in Cornwall, running a 500 cow grazing system, finishing all the beef, living with TB, and making life as easy as we can for ourselves, our staff, and our family. So it's really important to ourselves that we have a sustainable system going forward for a multi-generational business. My aim in life is to make it better for the next generation or generations. So we're a Jersey-based herd grazing. We aim to graze every day of the year that we possibly can. It may only be 3 hours, but it's maximising that our competitive and comparative advantage in that we can grow grass all through the year, especially through the winter as well, and utilising that homegrown protein source as well. So I'm the dairy-focused farm for a project called Farm Net Zero, which is a 5-year national lottery-funded project down in Cornwall, and it's leading to lots of different experiments and trying different things, which I always like to do. Always try and dare to be different would probably be my motto. So we're looking at our nice living route where we're drilling at the moment there. So we do a lot of direct drilling now to reseeds and are using multiple species swards. I think my take on multiple species would be it's probably going to be different for every farm, almost different soil types and whatever, and it's finding what works for you, and then it will take a few goes to work out what really suits your farm. So so this is the same field after drilling. I think with direct drilling, I think the biggest thing I had to learn was you had to be patient, and it will take a little time but to come, but when it comes really well. And again, you're not disturbing that soil. But saying that, I'm not against ploughing either. Ploughing once is absolutely fine. Some of the research we've done through Farm Net Zero and some early ag tech projects down in Cornwall was actually if you plough once, maybe in sort of every 10 years, it's absolutely no problem. You move that carbon down the soil profile, and then the next crop, you're actually building carbon almost quicker. If you plough a second time, that's when you start losing a lot of carbon. So, beautiful sunny day. It's raining at home at the moment. This was actually the first week of January. We into a mixed species sward. We do trials as well with sort of cover croppings, black oats, stubble turnips, all sorts of things. But this would be our autumn-born calves in January. We try and graze them right through if we can that first year. They're not a hell of a lot heavier than the sheep really, so it tends to work well for us. I said, well, okay, if we're getting very high levels of carbon within the soil, is there an opportunity for us then to integrate some veg growing to produce more human edible food into that rotation? So we actually work with partner farms on growing veg or potatoes. As a quick part of the rotation, we can actually graze through the winter, get a first or second cut of silage, and then it goes into veg. And then going back, then we can then use that as a reseeding policy. Again, some of the projects we've done, the trials are proving that we can actually regrow any carbon lost from the ploughing or cultivations from that veg. That we measured 5% of the farm after veg, and that actually almost halved our carbon footprint from 0.78 kilos of carbon down to 0.43 over a 3-year average. And that's just 5%. So technically we're probably net positive. So anyway, so as a grazing based farm, everybody thinks, okay, you don't take the technology, and it's all about simple systems. We are actually using a bit more technology now. You can see the collar on that cow. That's monitoring rumination. It's giving us a lot more detail, and I'm picking up any cow that's having problems or just needs to be inspection, and you can actually get better animal productivity by using a little bit of technology. We've actually changed from spring bulk calving to we calve now in late July when the grass has gone through the reproductive stage. So actually it suits us, our dry cows, really well to be eating this longer, more fibrous cover, so we can leave the covers grow longer, let the cows do the work, and the pastures are suiting them, and then they'll calve, and then we go into a lovely fresh regrowth through to the autumn, so we can maximize that productivity from grass. So again, we've got a competitive advantage in Cornwall with the right infrastructure. It's perfectly easy. This again was the first week of January. Cows are quite happy eating high quality pasture. I'm an Arla farmer, and on some of the boards, and you show that to a picture of somebody in northern Sweden, they sort of spit the dummy a little bit, but there we go. So it's about simplification, dare to be different, and realise that there's not one size or mixed species to suit all, but it's about comparative advantage and taking the most of those advantages. Quickly, moving on, I expect I'm getting short for time. So we do a lot of work as well. This is our herdsman. He loves training people and teaching, and this is the next generation. We've hosted Kingfisher Awards. We have numerous school visits through the year. If we can get our staff involved with that sort of thing as well, and this is engaging staff. These little boys in front we were warned they're absolute trouble and whatever. You can just see the engagement in their body language, and it's like, yeah, we engage them and they learn. And if we can get general public on side, it's a huge game changer going forward. So I'll just leave it one more slide after this, but basically, time and time again, we hear farmers and reps, you can't do that. You can't graze in January. You can't, okay? And the negativity, you just look at the top of the T, okay? And it's just negativity, and you cannot do it. But actually, take away the negativity, and that's what you end up with. And so there's a huge possibility there to go forward and take that opportunity to build a business with resilience and sustainability for the next generation. Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Thank you. Yeah, let's give him a round of applause. Thanks, Andrew. Hopefully this is all stimulating lots of questions and discussions that we're going to come to at the end. But keep hold of them, because we're then going to move on to Will, who's going to tell us a little bit about how he's managing the herds up at Yeo Valley.
Hi everyone, so I'm Will from Yeo Valley Farm. So I work really closely with Tom, but he's moved offices now to upstairs. So we've said goodbye to Tom not too long ago. Now he's in production, so he's kind of outside us now.
That sounds a lot like I died, Will.
Well, sort of did. No, he's still a great sounding board and potentially keeps me in check when I come up with too crazy ideas. But then he makes me give the crazy ideas in the first place. Hang on, I'll move on anyway. So at Yeo Valley Farms, we have a 800-hectare farm based in Blagdon, near the production site. Over that 800 hectares, it's all organic, obviously. But I suppose the question that when Becky sent over the idea of what is milk green, well, I actually thought, well, yeah, our milk's green, but it's only one part of our integrated regenerative organic system. So we produce much more than just milk on our farm. So we're beef and sheep farmers as well as arable farmers at the same time. And there's so much benefit for stacking those enterprises and integrating them in. I won't focus too much on those other enterprises in this bit, but I just wanted to highlight it at this stage. Also not going to highlight too much of this, but we have done our baselines, and that's very much with Becky and Tom and their expertise. I'm just a farmer, so I'm cracking on with the farming side. That's where my focus is. So Regen Dairy, we're looking at quite a few different developments at the moment within Yeo Valley Farms. We have a 240 cow autumn block system down at Holt Farm, and then another 100 cow spring block system up on the top of the Mendip. So we've got quite different climatic conditions, and that's a really good example, and something that everyone keeps on saying around Groundswell is you have to farm to your system. We have 2 different climates, and we have 2 different management systems to suit those farms. Next level grazing, and I hate to throw another acronym, and I promise I won't do another one ever again, but we've been along a holistic grazing journey over the last 3 years. We started off with our dairy beef system, and it was a great feeling point and proving the facts of what we've seen and the wider media and was come across from America. We're all really excited about it, and I think that's been covered loads in different areas. But the age-old question is, how does that apply to dairy? It's a completely different livestock class to a beef animal, and that was the real challenge. How do we graze those taller covers but still maintain milk in the tank? And that's something that we're really trying to achieve at the moment, and it's been a real challenge. We're working with a consultant called Siobhan Griffin, and she's sort of championing that next level grazing. She has holistically managed training, but she comes from a dairy context, which is something we've never seen before, but is extremely exciting and something that we're really trying to run with. A real rough overview of the next level grazing is we're trying to target optimal recovery. We're using a key indicator species in our platform, and we're actually using cocksfoot because we're trying to manage our ryegrass from this platform. Really hard to trample ryegrass and really hard to get it to return into the quality. So something we're trying to move away from. I'm not suggesting that's exactly the same for every single farm. It could be very different for you, but that's what we're finding at the moment. But we're aiming for that optimal recovery, and we're resetting with good trampling, and we're raising the leaf stage at which we're targeting the grazing every year and even after the summer solstice. So we're trying to train the epigenetics of the plant to get deeper and deeper roots and taller covers, but maintaining that quality. Now, it's a 5-year process. from Siobhan's sort of advice. I'm quite impatient, and potentially we push it too far, and we get told off, and then milk drops, but we bring it right back. But in the process, I thought to show you some slides of it, but focusing very much on one field. So this is near Grib down at Holt Farm, our autumn calving block. At the beginning of the season, we turned out way too late. It was too wet. It's a clay farm right in the bottom of the valley, and we just couldn't get cows out when we wanted to. So on our first round of the grazing, grass was getting ahead of us, and we made the decision to defer some paddocks. So near Grib the decision was made to defer that paddock. Something that the next level grazing is really teaching us is we have to be completely adaptive. We went round and we found out the recoveries weren't nearly quick enough to get back onto that grazing round. So we thought, right, we're going to have a crack into this deferred grazing. But how we manage that deferred grazing is completely different. We're talking about covers which are 9,000 kilos of dry matter per hectare here, and we're putting milking cows into them. So you can't expect them to eat the whole area. So we're only utilising 30% of that. But it's a fantastic atmosphere to be in, walking through that field and watching the environment and the wildlife just bounce up in front of you. And some of those chicories there, I did have a photo which I should put in of Richard Greaves, the dairy unit manager. He's, he says he's 6 foot, but we had the chicory up at 6 foot. So give or take a few inches. But I hope he's not here. He probably is. And then just looking at sort of the figures, it's crazy to think that we went into that 9,000 kilos of dry matter and we only took 30% utilisation. You can see in the corner there. In the whole field, we put 30 tonnes of soil food back into that field. Imagine 30 tonnes of compost going into the field in a rotation. It's huge. And it's really interesting when you look at sort of Elaine Ingham's work and the balance of the carbon to nitrogen ratio and her buckets. We're putting those buckets right into the soil, and the recovery, hopefully it's the next slide if I did my job right. No, we maintain milk. Wrong way around. I'll cover this bit quickly though. What you would expect and to go into those taller covers, and that wasn't our optimal recovery. That's something I want to quite make clear. We went over the optimal recovery for all that paddock, but that was for a reason, and we managed it with it. But in order to maintain the milk, we didn't force the cows to eat too much of it. So they only took that 30%. So they only took the high energy part of the plant. So they selectively grazed the top, but they weren't selective in their trampling, and that's a really key aspect and something that took me a bit of time to get my mind over. But when you have the non-selective trampling, here we go. Yes, perfect. Non-selective trampling, you're creating an amazing mosaic of trampled materials, and those materials can't just lie flat in all one direction. They need the amazing element of the cow's hoof to put the material as high as the worm can jump. My new favourite saying. I think it should catch on, hopefully. I'm going to trademark that one. No, I can't, it's Siobhan's. But we're putting that material right into the surface of the soil. And actually what's amazing and something we've blown our minds is, and I maybe get a bit too excited with it, and the guys on the unit can contest, but the quality coming back. So on the right there, or my left, your right, whatever it is, that's a 27-day recovery, and we're at the free leaf stage of Coxfoot there. We're not quite into the blaze of growth. At 30 days, we reached our optimum recovery, and the cows were in there a couple of days ago. So from going from a deferred paddock, being adaptive and changing our management, and actually maintaining our milk and putting carbon down into the ground. 2 minutes. Right, I'm going to be really quick. Chicory, trampled it, grew fresh tillers, fixed sward. It was really cool. Next level grazing, we've increased our rooting depth from 1 year of doing it on average over those 3 fields by 30%. We're chucking carbon into spheres that we haven't put it before. That's really exciting. And we know that our lowest carbon is down in that 30 centimetres, which is also great. Homegrown feeds, I'll keep zipping through these because there's a few more to go. Essentially, what we're trying to do is we're trying to feed our cows with the highest quality feed that we can grow ourselves on the farm. We have a really ambitious target to try and get to 100% homegrown feeds. How long that's going to take us to get there, I'm not sure. Rotations are a long-term thing, but it's something that we're really working on. But I suppose the first step in our journey is what can we grow? We chucked everything, and I had to buy the drill man a beer because he did 8 different plots, and he hated me at the end of the day, and it was really hot. But I'm not even going to begin to try and list out what multi-species we had in these plots because I'm dyslexic and I'd get in all a kerfuddle. But anyway, it's really amazing. So we've got some triticale here, peas, beans, lupins. We did try soya, not successful, but we'll move on from that one. But it's proof points of what will grow well for us, and lupins was a really good protein source, so we're trying to plant lupins into the future. But one commitment that we have made is we're not going to plant any monocultures ever on the farm again, which is quite exciting. It's not all rainbows. I'm a organic dairy farmer, so I love docks in the top left. I thought I'd be truthful and put that up. But that's our attempt at eliminating the plough and the rotation. We tried to disc the field, establish a cover crop, and then go in with the cash crop. It didn't work this time, but it worked in another field. So we're going to keep pushing on with that and crops. One thing that is, and I'm going to get a nod from Tom here, it's a bit of a pet subject of mine, but it's genetics. I think at Groundswell it's really well covered in the kind of plant area of making sure that we have the right wheats to grow in our current conditions into this regen period, but also that's very important for dairy as well. And my big concern at the moment with dairy is we're moving in completely the opposite direction. We're using bulls in the dairy system where the dams have never put milk into the tank. They're not proving themselves in this system change. And I think us as farmers, we're responsible for our own genetics and we're responsible for breeding cattle to suit this regenerative organic farming system, and we need to keep control of that. And a shameless plug, we breed British Frisian pedigrees and we have bulls for sale.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Will. Loads and loads of things which, again, if we can come on to in questions, but also you can grab Will afterwards and talk about those sorts of things. Let's move on to hear from Lucy to tell us all about what you've been doing on your farm.
Well, I think following these guys, I think the best thing I can do is probably start with why I shouldn't be here. So that's our farm. We've got 200 autumn block calving dairy cows. A youngish herd. We've expanded really quickly from breeding our own replacements over the last 4 or 5 years. So I've got 70% first and second calvers in the herd at the moment. The adult cows are averaging just over 10,000 litres. So there's a lot of reasons why I shouldn't be here. We grow a lot of maize, but we've spent a long time chasing this. This was what the dairy industry was trying to persuade us we should be doing. This was what was going to work. More milk, more cows, more milk, more cows. And so that's what we did. And we got there. You know, the KPIs that we would look at for cow performance, for cost of production and stuff was all there. And this time last year, we sat at the kitchen table with a new milk contract on the table in front of us, and we went, actually, I'm not sure that we can be doing this anymore. I'm done with it. Like, there's no joy in it. We don't enjoy it. We don't want to be doing it. We're just constantly busy chasing these marginal everythings, marginal litres, marginal gains everywhere. And my kids were there at the time, and I looked at them and I thought, I don't want you coming into this system. I don't want you coming and having to spend the next, 30 years doing this as well. We've chased this for 10 years, and this is what we've got you, is a lot of concrete, some really pretty sheds and some nice cows that are quite happy in there in the winter, but probably not a lifestyle that we particularly want. And Mark was there, and with the contract that we now have, so we supply first milk into the Naturally Better Dairy Group contract. And we sat down and said, okay, are they really going to go? For dairy farmers, an awful lot of this is like emotional tie as well. These cows are all homebred. They've all been there. We know them. They've got names. And actually the bit where we would have to load them on the lorry and send them to market was probably the bit that stopped us from going. And we had the new milk contract, and I said, okay, look, if this isn't working and this is what we want, we have to do it differently. And so we're not going to half-ass this. We're doing it all out. And they were like, well, okay, so maybe just do half of it to start with. Maybe don't do it all in the first instance. But we did do a lot more than probably we should have done. So I'm going to tell you a bit about what we've done over the last year or so. We were grazing anyway. So with autumn block calvers, the whole point that we'd done with that was that we could then graze really well in the spring, summer, and autumn. So they were already grazing 6 months, rotationally grazing. Lots of it was multi-species swards already with reasonably low inputs. We've never got enough money to buy fertiliser, so we don't tend to have that option anyway. Lots of clover and ryegrass swards, though, with a lot of native grasses in them as well. I had some school kids visit the other day, and I sent them out to pick grass and look at how many different varieties we had, and they came back with like 7 different types of grass out of our cow lays. So That was the girls last week. Quite happy, going into really big covers. They graze quite well. They leave quite a lot of it behind, and they're quite happy. So what we've done over the last year that we saw as the big risks in our system with whether we could be regen or not is the maize was a huge issue for us. So we were growing lots of maize. It was a guaranteed crop for us. We dry up a lot in the summer. Maize was easy. So we would spray it, cover it in muck, plough it, guaranteed crop of maize. So this year we didn't spray it, we didn't plough it. We did a bit of power harrowing. We've undersown it all with clover. And I mean, it is there. There's definitely maize in rows. The clover's there, and we'll see whether it works. Obviously, it won't yield as high as it would have done. But the fact is that if we can do that, and we can say, well, we can still grow maize in this system, and it's not too bad in terms of we're now not doing the soil disturbance. We're not monocropping it. We've got the cover crop in there all year round. Then maybe that's a tick. We can kind of keep doing that. If it doesn't work, we'll have to look at something different. And for us, the other thing is then we buy a lot of protein in to balance that maize. So trying to grow homegrown protein as well. And that hasn't gone very well this year. And I could probably spend a long time blaming the weather. But that's the challenge for us. So these guys are aiming for 100% of their milk from homegrown feeds. We're aiming this year. We think we'll be at 50 to 60%. But that comes from probably only being at like 20 or 30% last year, I think it was. So it's step changes, but it's challenging it. And for us, we can take those risks because our milk contract supports us to be doing that. So with First Milk, we do our regen plans, and it looks at beyond just a carbon footprint. So it looks at every single intervention in every single field. And I can score points for that, for looking at my hedgerows, field margins, biodiversity enhancements in every field, how I manage it in terms of my grazing rotations, my sward diversities. So there is something for everybody in that. And everybody, every farmer could go out there and look at this prescribed way that we can score points in our systems. And we can all say, well, actually, I can do some of this, even if I can't do all of it. So that was a massive thing for me a year ago, with being like, well, I can't do it. I'm not going to just graze. I'm not going to be these guys doing just grazing. I have to have a way that it can appeal to me as the average dairy farmer. And if we bring it back to, can milk be green? Well, on an individual farm it can, but we need to make sure as an industry we're all going the right way. And so we have to have a way for this to appeal to more than just grazing farmers. So if I'm the guy in the middle, the way that I looked at it was, right, well, if this is some of the stuff that I can do, let me pick what I can do and let's see what it can do and how it works. And the risk is then shared because I'm paid according to how many points I can get. I get bonuses from First Milk, and then I get the bonus again from Naturally Better Dairy Group. So it's like sharing the risk of having a go with this. It's them saying, we want you to do this, but you're not alone with this. We'll support you financially so that you can be braver. You can look at what the potential impact of this is and be braver with trying stuff. So we're not very far down our journey, but we need more farms like us to say, well, actually, we can go a little bit this way. And if as an industry, we all took a bit of a step sideways, that would make a massive difference in answering that question of, can milk be green? Well, we need the industry to be green, not just individual farms. I think this is maybe the last two. So that's my kids out plate metering. And that's probably the biggest difference for us with doing the farm this way, is that we now have a system that my children absolutely love, and they really engage with it. They see other things happening on other people's farms, and they want to know how that fits into a regen system. How is that going to benefit our planet and what we're trying to do, whether we can make a difference and be part of a solution, not a problem. My kids are Joseph's 9 and Lottie's 5, and they know about climate change. It scares them, and I don't want them to turn around to us in 10 years' time and say, why did you just carry on? Why didn't you do something? Why weren't you brave enough to have a go with this and to do something different and to hopefully spread it beyond our little patch of 600 odd acres to show other people that we can do this as well. So peer-to-peer knowledge transfer in farming is incredible. And First Milk, the network that we have there, where I can just phone farmers that I've never met, never spoken to, and be like, I've heard that you're doing this, can I come and see you? And they'll give me half a day of their time, and we can have a chat over a cup of tea and work out, learn from each other, so that we're not all just trying to solve these problems alone. My kids love it when people come out on the farm and they can go and take them around and show them what we're doing. And that was us attempting to direct drill spring peas and barley this year. And the reason I put that photo in was because I'm not even a farmer, so I shouldn't be here. Like, I just married one 10 years ago. And the contractor phoned me up this year and he's like, do you reckon that will travel to get those spring peas and barleys in? And I haven't got any idea at all about kit. I was like, yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. So he turns out that rig's like 29 ton before it's got the seed in it. And he turned up, I was like, yeah, we'll have a go, shall we? And they were game, and to be fair, we dragged it in, and actually that field was the one that came up the best. Because I can't ride the ponies through it anymore because I trip over the peas when I'm trying to run with Lottie and her pony. So the peas came up dense enough in that to trip me over. And I haven't got a photo of it, but I should have done, so we'll see whether it works. But it's such a massive learning curve, and our contractors aren't particularly engaged with it. And they clearly go back and think, God, like, what's she going to want to do next? But I mean, it kind of worked. I don't know if we'll be having that one in if we've got the spring next year that we had this year, but he didn't go away. He did get it all in. So I think just have a go. Make sure that you're phoning other people that are having been through the same journey. Farmers love to talk about their problems and to tell everyone what went wrong and what went right. And I think that's our biggest resource in this Can Dairy Be Green, is making sure that we're all doing it because we can learn from each other.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much, Lucy. And finally, everybody's been very well behaved and stuck to time. So we are doing really well. So come on, Mark, let's finish off well. So I'm going to hand you over to Mark from First Milk.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And certainly I'll keep to time. I've got no slides. I just want to tell you a little bit. First Milk. People maybe see us saying who, which is like, who's First Milk? A group of 700 farmers, which is like a dairy farmers cooperative, true cooperative. And I can almost guarantee that maybe you've not heard of us, but you're more likely to eat products that we produce eventually, but we sell business to business. So we sell into major retail. So if you eat yogurt, eventually is like, if you eat cheese, cheddar cheese, eventually, or you eat a Kit Kat, pretty much is actually some of our milk will be in it. We began the journey about 4 years ago, recognizing that our unique selling point and our biggest single asset as a dairy farmers cooperative were our members. That's like, and their farming system. That's what our customers were actually asking us about. How is this milk farmed? We also saw that being grazers, actually, that they had again an opportunity here to do something about at the time the biggest single issue seemed to be carbon, and actually, like in climate change, very little has changed. But we saw that there's no way that we can just do this by reducing emissions. There has to be a way to actually, as like, carbon sequestration we saw as a fantastic opportunity. 95% of our emissions is at farm level. The factories and the transport is almost irrelevant. So we had to do something and get actually is like, our members working together to actually do something about it. And I'm pleased to say is actually like, I'm so proud to actually work for these guys. Actually, but we've established a sense of pride back in our members, and the regenerative system, which is like, I think has actually done that. It has actually brought families together. There's more interaction between husbands and wives, which is like, because it's a downside more than just about carbon sequestration. It's actually the enjoyment that people get about increasing biodiversity is actually, I would say, has been a bigger motivator. Nobody can see carbon. Actually, you can tell the difference in biodiversity for sure. How did we do it? It's just like, what we needed to do first is actually say why. Why do people actually need to follow regenerative practices? Or basically, it's an evolutionary process. They were more likely doing regenerative practices anyway. They could just do more of them. So first, the reason why, of course, they needed to do it was to protect and promote their business. There was an opportunity here. But we also needed to protect. We needed to actually push back against those who were saying eating dairy is bad for the planet, so therefore move away from dairy. They perfectly understood that. And then really is to show them how. It's like, and this peer-to-peer learning, Lucy's already adequately demonstrated. That's the way this happens, is go out. So we dug pits on farms and showed people 1 meter deep, 3 foot wide. Get down in amongst it. See that roots do go down a long way. Roots are deep. You can see the devil down there. Watch the film, it's brilliant. As far as in terms of, and then it's actually is like trying to get people, once they see of actually the opportunities, this is something that you can try a field at a time. Lucy's gone all in. That's every field has actually had multiple, multi-species I've put on them this year. We don't recommend that. Try a field at a time. I've actually at first, but there's early adopters. There are people that basically are very cautious, but Regen allows that to actually happen. And then really is what we do is it's the so what. And we are so actually passionate about measurement. So all of our farms, 700 farms, or 98%, will complete a plan where they will enter we call interventions on every single field. So the grazing system, how many months they graze, of actually what species they're in there, as far as if they've got hedges, how would they treat those hedges? How do they protect water courses? What are they doing for the environment? And then we added this up, and then we show them the impact and a measurement system which we developed with Farm Carbon Toolkit of the impact that's going to have on not just carbon, but biodiversity and water protection as well. We then actually put our money where our mouth is. So what we do is actually we, as a business, the board decided that this is so important that some of the money that we earn from our sales of cheese or milk, instead of paying it out on fat, protein, or back to scan and cell count, we put it towards Regen. So the more that people do, the greater returns they get. So they get a bigger slice of the cake. And therefore, that demonstrates and makes changes. And we've been able to show that year on year now for the last 3 years, where we've got the records, that we've shown an increase in all three of those areas, and people are now being paid both to do the plan, but then the score that they actually achieve. Collectively, again, Farm Carbon Toolkit have done this. We had a target to sequester 100,000 tons of CO2 equivalent by 2025. We got really close last year at 99,000 tons. This year, the calculations done by Farm Carbon Toolkit, we've done 114,000. I think is absolutely amazing, and that's been delivered by the farmers. Not me, not the company, the farmers making the change. It gives them pride, and I think it helps them demonstrate that dairy done well can be part of the climate solution. Thank you very much.
Fabulous. So I think we've heard a real range of points, discussion points, farmer experiences, hearing from Tom and Mark around how do we help to support this, to make this change. So it's now over to you guys. What are the questions that you have? My one sort of plea to all of you is, so we can try and get as much discussion going as possible, if we can keep our questions nice and short and succinct, so that we can actually make sure that we can get through that. So hands up, and we've got a roving mic. Hopefully, here comes our roving mic, and we'll get going.
Hi, thank you very much. My name's Anna Bullen. I'm CEO at the Commonwealth Trust, based at Bort Place in Kent. We've got 500 acres. I just started there a couple of months ago, next to my new farm manager. We've got 200 cows at the moment, but I've been brought in because I'm a systems thinker. I spent 30 years in the environmental sector. I've just come from Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales, where we spent a long time looking at how we achieve zero carbon at a UK scale. And we know that one of the biggest issues is land use and the massive quantity of land that is used up by agriculture. We also know that the Climate Change Committee are very, very clear. If we want to reach net zero, we have to reduce the number of livestock. I suppose my question to the panel, I really appreciate everything you're doing. I recognise that dairy has come a really long way, but I invite you to take a step back, look at the bigger picture in terms of the whole food system, and what part moving forwards, given what I just said about the vast quantity of land that's taken up for grazing animals to produce crops for animals, when we've got an incredibly vulnerable food security system in the UK in terms of feeding the people. What part do you think dairy plays in that?
Right. What part is dairy playing in the future? Right. I have a lot. What does everyone else want to say?
Slightly itching. it'd be great for you to come and see our farm.
Okay.
Please
I
do.
will. I will.
Come see me afterwards, because
Yeah.
I think there's a lot in that question.
Yeah.
But I think actually getting your boots on the ground on a regenerative organic farming system and actually seeing the ecosystem services that we provide carbon, and we are providing nutrient-dense food to feed the population at the same time. So it's not one or the other. We're looking at the whole thing.
Anyone else want to touch on that? Yeah. Well done, Will. I think that's good. I think the other thing I would just like to say is that, again, we know that the way that these things are measured in terms of, again, if we think about emissions, which are obviously attributed to agriculture, but a lot of what these guys are doing up here, and like Mark was saying, the good stuff that's coming in terms of land use is taken from a separate pot. We need to bring these two things together and realise that if we are going to achieve improved carbon sequestration, livestock are essential in that. We will get so far in terms of being able to reduce emissions, but unless we have those livestock in those systems, it's very difficult to be able to actually get that sequestration. I'm going to hang on because there are other questions. Do come back. Let's come over to the question that we've got here.
Hi there. My name is Rachel. I'm a dairy goat farmer. I'm doing a Nuffield scholarship on grass-based dairy. I was wondering, for those of you with your own herds, what proportion of your ration is grazed grass, and what would be your optimum target that you would want it to be for your system?
I'll go first. So grazed, we aim to get at least 30% of our grazed ration right through the winter, and then it will be 100% right through from sort of March right through until September. But so overall, around about 85% would be grazed.
I'm really jealous. 85% sounds perfect. That's green gold going in all the time. So we have a spring block calving and an autumn block calving and different climatic conditions. So it's hard to pinpoint a maximum or like an average between the two herds. But I suppose what we're trying to do is the more the better. It's every time you make silage, you're degrading grazed grass. So the more that we can take, the better.
So ours is really variable as well. So November through to February, we don't graze our cows at all. They're full-time grazed for 7 months of the year, and then with no extra feed at all, so that'd be 100%. And then kind of the early spring, like March, and then September, maybe 50%. So it averages out, but for 7 months of the year, it's 100% grazed grass.
Fabulous. Who's next? Hands up. So we've got one over there. Yep.
Hi, thank you very much for the panel discussion. I'm Natalie Conti. I'm from Antler Bio. So I'm a scientist by training, and in this company, we're looking at epigenetics and how environment affects gene expression in dairy cows, and in turn, affect the yield production and helping farmer make data-driven decision. There's something that was mentioned at the beginning of the talk, which was collect data and evidence. And we all understand that we need, obviously, to collect this in a cohesive way to drive the change and to drive the next generation to change practice. We live in an ocean of data, from soil to biodiversity to genetics to quality of milk. What, from your perspective, is really important to concentrate on initially? What are the critical data that needs, our attention first?
Okay, brilliant. For you guys, as your farmers, what's been the thing that's been, I suppose, kept you going on that journey in terms of the data that you've been collecting? What's been that indicator that's been useful?
We're early on with measuring ours, but the one that we've really enjoyed, and probably because my children and the school children that we've had out have really enjoyed it, is our biodiversity. So we've got bioacoustics on the farm at the moment, recording and measuring birds, bats, and we're using soil acoustics as well. And my kids absolutely love that, even with like the Merlin bird app going and seeing that kind of stuff. And that's what, like Mark was saying, we can see that, and my children really love that. So for us, that's our real driver, is being able to impact that by having more diverse species on the farm, making sure that we've got field margins that are managed carefully, all those extra things that we can do that we can see that the public also love. If we're talking about engaging with the public and having that interface, having them out, school children out on the farm to engage with that as well, has been our main driver, really.
Will?
So I'd probably split it into two for us. We still have our sort of key financial performance. So we have our daily live weight gain and our dairy beef system. We've got our milk margin in our milk system. But I think those are completely interactive with everything that we're playing around with. So like our new grazing system that we're trying to push, there's times in which we might have a lower yield because we're trying to carry more grass forward, but then we don't have to bring the cows into the shed. So I think we never like to focus on one KPI in an individual basis. It has to be an accumulation. But the one that I always go back to is I don't know, it's probably cliche by now, but digging a hole. We dug a hole before I came up to Groundswell, and we're going into a drought. So we need to prepare for that, and we're going to need to adjust our grazing rotation in order to change.
Andrew?
Going back to what Becky said, you have to be in the black to be green. It's got to come back to profitability. We're running businesses, and if you're not making a profit, it's very difficult to be green. So it's careful budgeting and making sure that the decisions you make on farm, understanding how that affects the bottom line of the business.
Brilliant. And again, I'm more than happy to tell you all the things that we're collecting on all of the farms afterwards. So come and tell us and I'll bore you all about that. Brilliant. I think we've probably got time for 2 more. So should we go over there, down to the gentleman over there? And then we'll have one more after that. So let's make them good ones.
Hi. Hello.
Yep.
Daniel Enriquez Hidalgo from the University of Bristol, lecturer in Sustainable Dairy Production Science. Thanks a lot for the great talks. You are doing a lot of activities, and I hear a lot of challenges, trial errors, and so on. And we're talking about the costs. I would like to know from the two perspectives, from the industry and from the farmer's perspectives, what do you think that would be a fair price for the milk to try to do some sort of these investments? I hope I don't touch the wood.
Great question. So what's the price that's fair? Who's going to go first? Come on. Come on, Tom.
Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, ask the milk boy.
Go on, Mark.
Thanks, guys. Look, I mean, as far as we need to be realistic here, which is like, so our approach is, of course, is we return as much as we possibly can get out of the marketplace back to our members, actually. So when we're out there selling now, I say to our commercial teams, etc., when we go out selling to customers, we're not looking to sell milk. We don't sell cheese. We don't sell butter. We actually sell natural, nature-based solutions. And that's what the customers are interested in. And it's our job then to actually extract value of actually and pass back to our members, such as like as much as we can. But because there is definitely people out there who wish to pay more of actually like, for the product, because they recognize that the need to actually is make changes, such as like to improve biodiversity, carbon sequestration, etc. So therefore, I mean, our attitude is that people that are not willing to pay for that will not get the milk in the future. Those companies who do support this journey, the likes of Yo Valley, Nestle, I would say, are the people that the milk is going to gravitate to, which will increase farmer returns. But we've got to be realistic. I bet you like, the milk is actually like, is out there and will be traded actually like as butter and powder throughout the world. So we have to be realistic. But there are premiums to be had, and actually like it's job for people like myself and our companies to extract that. But they'll be extracted by the farmers' actions. Actually, the farmers are needed to be doing stuff that the consumers are looking for to pay for.
Well, I was just going to add that, and it's probably not the answer you're looking for, Daniel, but I think what you've asked is a very technically difficult question, and we're trying to answer it. And I think definitely in the work we're doing with First Milk, we've built some quite a broad array of things which farmers can unlock further payment for, and we've had to toggle those as we go along, as we get feedback on the costs of doing some of these things. I think what's interesting is the bit about resilience and a bit about what you can build in their systems and about what we as a supply chain can help to catalyse. So I guess for some things there are very direct cost increases. If we ask somebody to do more of something or less of something, stop buying soya or something, could be something where there's a really known cost for that. We would then have to look at how we support that and how we pass that through to customers. But there are other things which I think we could all do, which are huge opportunities, which actually aren't massively costly, but which need support on kind of data or engagement. And so I think I don't really have the answer to that. I think we've put some quite decent support behind fueling transition with farmers who we work with. But I think we're all still trying to get to, and I kind of hate the terms natural capital and nature-based solutions, but the whole natural capital market in the moment is trying to figure this stuff out. How do we value this, and how do we return that to the farms? And I don't think anyone's fully cracked it yet. But I think we do have, we've got a good start, and we're getting good feedback, and we're all starting to understand we might get to that point in the future.
Brilliant. I think the last question was this one here in the middle. If we could get a mic over here. Thank you very much. Just this one here, if possible. Thank you.
Fantastic talk, thank you. I'm Amy Jackson. I work in communications and industry reputation. Maybe up to 40% of cows in this country are housed year-round. And in the spirit of what Lucy said of bringing everyone along with us, and also Andrew's of I Can, what should people who house dairy cows year-round focus on what they can do as a matter of priority in this whole picture?
Fabulous question to end on. Should we go along, see what people think? Mark, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, actually, it's like, whilst we predominantly have got grazed herds, actually, like we do have people that house as well. And of course, there's absolutely loads of stuff that can be done, and therefore they're not precluded from actually operating in that system. Which is, we would always say, though, that actually is like grazing the cows is the best, the best solution actually in regenerative. But generally, they will actually be grazing some animals on the land to be able to still get the benefit of the golden hooves, which is like, and all the great stuff they do. So whether that's their young stock or your heifer replacements or dry cows, etc., there are opportunities. Or sometimes actually these herds, they'll be doing stuff with their actually later lactation cows, so they do start to graze actually there as well. So definitely there's a place, of course there is.
Yeah, I agree with what Mark was saying. I think for us, I would never not graze my cows, and I think it's really important. It's a really difficult question, because if you look outwards to the public, it's one of those things that actually is probably one of the bigger reputational risks to the industry is to not be grazing cows. But it's a really difficult one to answer. I think if we want everybody to be taking steps, like we said, we've got so much that people can pick that they can do. We can still do species diversity. We can still do biodiversity enhancements. There's nothing to stop that in terms of having more diverse crops, and we see the benefits for that. Grazing livestock, like Mark said, most of them will have young stock and things out, so they've still got that benefit.
I've very much come from a grazing angle, as for full disclosure, and we're an organic system. So I wouldn't be able to sort of advise in that regard. But what I would say is that the brilliant thing about these regenerative principles, and I know it kind of is a reoccurring theme all the time, but you can apply them to your own context. So applying those regenerative principles in any system that you run will yield benefits. We apply those regenerative systems to grazing because that's what we believe in and that's what suits our context, and we're trying to maximise our own regenerative outcomes from our own farming system, and I think any farmer can do the same.
We have to include the fully housed units. From an animal welfare base, a well-run indoor unit is great for animal welfare, and you can't get away from that. Probably different genetics for different systems, but there are lots of things on a regenerative mindset, hedgerow management or interrow cropping or all these other different things that the fully housed unit can actually do to help their soil structure, help carbon sequestration and all these different things. So it's definitely not just for grazing farmers. Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of echo all of that. I think, often those kind of units are carrying out a lot of growing, a lot of annual cropping, a lot of grass growing, and I think there's huge opportunities in there to embody, the diversity principles, seed mixes, tillage techniques, all the stuff that probably the first thing to do is come to Groundswell and have a look around. But I think, interestingly, the WWF, I think it was the WWF, somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, produced a fallow years report at the start of this year, which inspected transition for different dairy systems. And they did say that the best thing you can do is to go back outdoors if you really want to kind of move towards agroecology. And I know there's huge technical difficulties about that, but I bring it up because I've spoken to house units recently who are starting to inspect this, who are starting to think about how they can do it. And I think, if there's any way we can jump on that and provide support, that's really powerful. And I think that goes alongside inspecting the reasons why cattle have gone indoors as well. And in the southwest of England, I think TB is a huge contributor to that. And therefore, if that's the stumbling block, can we please, continue to apply the pressure to kind of unblock that bottleneck? Because, like I say, I think it's not going to be possible across the board. But if we can support housed units to go outdoors, we should certainly look at how we do that.
And I think just to finish off, I think it brings us really beautifully back round to where we started from, in terms of if we think about that carbon footprint per litre of milk, those house systems are the ones that at the moment are seen as the most carbon efficient. So it sort of brings us back around to thinking about, actually, if we're going to look at the climate crisis, our ability to deliver milk with a good carbon footprint, we need to develop the data and the way to apply these principles, because if we're just looking at it at emissions intensity, if you put them outside, your carbon footprint's going to go up. So unless we develop the monitoring systems to be able to showcase the benefits, like we've been speaking about today, of transitioning over to that system, why would they? We know there are the bigger benefits in terms of soils, biodiversity, and all the rest of it. But I think, coming back to what these guys are saying, re-engaging people with their soils, going out, digging holes, looking at what we can do, and then starting to apply that on a young stock basis. But it beautifully brings us back round to where we started from. How do we work together and collaborate to make sure that we've got metrics that demonstrate the benefits of these sorts of systems? We're not just clobbered into a hole, which makes us think that we just need to produce more milk. So thank you ever so much, everybody, for coming. Thank you for the questions. I'm sure these discussions are going to continue. But please just join me thanking my amazing panelists who have been fabulous this morning.